What I'm going to do is talk about an aspect of theology that's called visual theology. It's really looking at how the arts and how art affects the way we talk, look, and understand God. But I'm going to look at it from a particular angle. I'm going to take the angle of the Eastern Orthodox tradition, which has a very distinctive way of using art as theology, and that's the icon. And so we're going to take one icon in particular. It's a beautiful icon that was painted in the Middle Ages by a monk artist called Andrei Rublev. It's a very famous icon. It's an icon based upon the Genesis story of Abraham, who with Sarah receives visitors at Mamre under the oak tree, and the visitors turn out to be a manifestation of the divine. In Genesis it talks about 3 angelic visitors, which is a reference perhaps to the Christian development of God in terms of Trinity. The icon is very simple indeed. It has 3 exactly similar figures based around a table. 2 of them are looking inwards and 1 is looking out. And on the table is a chalice or a cup. Behind them is often the tree in one corner, and then a little image of a house, which is a symbol that they're outside a house. And then perhaps there's another element. There might be Abraham and Sarah in the picture, or there might not. But we're not going to look at that. We're going to look at the 3 figures. Now, when we start talking about art and God and images of God, of course we've run up a big trouble. There's big trouble with this, because God, of course, is not imaged in the Judeo-Christian tradition, or shouldn't be imaged. Islam, of course, forbids any image of the divine. And so we have to ask ourselves, how does Christianity come to portray images of God? Well, of course, the issue revolves around the doctrine of Jesus. Who was he? Was he God? Was he man? Was he a mixture of both? And we find that the Christian tradition has evolved and looked at Christianity and looked at Jesus and said, we believe him to be the manifestation of God in the person of Jesus of Nazareth, but also part of that divine essence, that divine being. He's God and human. And therefore, over a period of time, it was thought wise that if we did use art and we could image human creation, that we could also image the stories, gospel teachings, pictures of Jesus in his life. Therefore, there came a tradition of illustrating God in terms of Christ. As time moves on, of course, little debasements creep in, and we do find that as the image of God as Father becomes associated with an Ancient of Days, so artists tended occasionally to portray God the Father with a beard. But that's something that's really prohibited in the Eastern tradition, because they say, no, you cannot image the one God. You cannot image the God who's creator, we don't see. You can image him in terms of symbol, so we can image him in terms of light, or perhaps in his name, as they do in Judaism, or perhaps a hand symbolizing creation, or perhaps a divine eye, the all-seeing eye, which unfortunately, I think since we've had The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, is associated with Sauron, but it's got that image, the all-seeing eye, that's there. The Holy Spirit, well, the Holy Spirit we can't see, but we use images and metaphors from illustrative words that are talked about the Spirit, so we use images of wind, fire, dove, those sort of things. But how do we image the Trinity? Well, as an object lesson, perhaps we can look at Rublev's Trinity and try and see how the artist is picking up little elements of life and saying, right, you can't see God, but you can begin to understand God. And we understand God by analogy, by linking into things that are in our life. What's the icon all about then? If you take a picture of the icon, if you look at it, you'll first of all see an image of 3 exactly similar figures. If you think of the Trinitarian understanding of God, what's being said here is that the 3 personifications, the 3 persons of God in Christian theology, are meant to be ways of exploring and explaining how God can be beyond creation, in creation, and always around in creation. So you have that beyond as the Father, the Creator, who's unseen, we don't know. Jesus, who lived among us for a time, the human figure of God, living as one of us and taking life as one of us. And then the God who always has been in life, around life and giving life, which is the Spirit. So the three are balanced. And in this image, the artist has created a kind of mathematical formula. There's a triangular structure and a circular structure. So there's triangle of 3 and a circle meaning whole. And the way they look at things draws them into each other and links to each other. So there's that. The positioning of the icon is very clear. It's telling us something about the relationship of these 3. But there's something more complex as well. One of the ways in which Rublev tries to draw us in and see what's going on here is the use of colour. And the use of colour actually is perhaps more important than we think. And I think modern communities have lost the understanding of the older understanding of colours, which were based upon a lot of earth pigment and precious stones. And the main colours besides the primary earth colours are green, gold, brown, red, an ochre colour, very dark colours, purple, blue and white. In this icon we have a background which has a kind of translucent gold, long since gone because I think age has sort of removed it, but that translucent gold represented the divine realm that we can't perceive, but we can understand. Onto that, the iconographers place earth colours mixed with egg, so the whole artistic way of doing this is to bring together earth, living creatures, the yolk of an egg, binding it together with the white of an egg, producing colours and technique that actually last the centuries. It's one of the best sort of ways of painting, I think, called gesso. It's on gesso, it's on this alabaster, very hard and fixed surface, painted with these primary colours. It has egg yolk that binds it and tenses it into the whole surface itself. And what then happens is it's on a board which breathes, so the wood board itself bends with time. So what you've got there is actually a lovely little parable. The materials themselves are part of a theology of life, that we're using images that come from life itself and are created together, a kind of reflection of the Creator, that life is somehow the thought of God breathed into life at work among us. We're not into a kind of fundamentalism here, we're into an evolutionary understanding of God utilising who people are, utilising imagination, utilising creation. But go back to the icon. The icon very carefully uses 3 different types of colour. Each one gives a meaning to who the people are. When you look at the icon, you'll immediately think the most important person is the one in the middle. But actual fact, Rublev has not chosen the one in the middle to be the most important. The one in the middle actually is Christ, and the reason the one in the middle is Christ is because this one is clothed in a much darker cloak. The darker cloak, the reddish, purplish colour, is a symbol of the humanity covering the divine. The one actually on, when we're looking at it, our left, is actually the Creator, and that's because that image is coated in gold and blue, which is the heavenly colours. And the one on our right, as we look at the icon, is the Spirit, because the Spirit has got green, the colour of life, as well as gold and light. So very cleverly, the whole perception, if you like, of a hierarchy of beings in the Trinity is removed. It's seen as a dialogue between 3 linked persons who are equal but are involved with each other. And where the icon focuses our eyes finally is in the centre on this simple little cup. And what's the cup all about? Well, actually the cup is about the Eucharist, the Christian act of worship, where in elements of bread and wine, material elements of life, the transformation takes place through this Spirit, so that these elements become a means of communication with the unseen God through Christ. It's again a teaching message saying art, elements, visual images, all come together as much as words do, as much as sermons do, to help us penetrate a little more the understanding of who God might be and who God is. Well, I'm going to leave you there in a sense with the icon, because the icon of Rublev's Trinity is one that I'd like you to look at yourselves and listen to what I've said and try and meditate on it. Look at the icon, look at the way things are linked together, and try and focus on the different relationships in the image. And you'll begin to see that art in this tradition is very carefully done. It's not three-dimensional, it's two-dimensional, because the third dimension's us. We are the ones who encounter what they would call the written word in visual form. So it's almost as though it's a book. But it's also called another thing, because the icon in the East are known as doors, doors of the sacred. And this is a whole theology, if you like, of material elements being the way into understanding the world beyond us, to use a simple phrase, the world of the divine one. And the icon is seen as a way of looking and perceiving, by meditating, focusing, praying on the world that it represents. And as one meditates, I suppose one gets this in the Buddhist tradition and other mystical traditions, as one meditates on the icon, so the meaning and the thought become part of ourselves, and we encounter it within. Well, I hope that's been a little excursion into part of what I'd call theology and art in the Eastern tradition. There are many other icons we can talk about and look at, but perhaps that's for another time. But what I would like one to think of is the words, if you like, of one of the great Eastern fathers, who said at a time when they were removing art, no art's important. If the divine one in Jesus became part of created life, then we who are part of created life can honour him in creation. In other words, we can honour God in art. We can honour God through our own hands, through the work of our hands, through creation itself, and then through that push that boundary out into the world beyond, the world of nature, the beauty of God in creation itself.